A derelict spaceship drifted alone through the void, hiding a grisly secret within its walls that would chill the crew that found it to their very bones. Captain Logan Morris, grizzled veteran of countless salvage operations across the galaxy, furrowed his brow as the unknown vessel's ghostly silhouette filled his viewscreen. The alert had come suddenly. An unidentified craft, detected in a long-abandoned sector, pristine and undamaged, despite its apparent decades of silent drifting. "Never seen a ship like that before, Logan. No markings, no distress signal, nothing. I've got a bad feeling about this," Zach Harding, Logan's second-in-command, said, his voice tight with unease. Logan grunted, his eyes tracing the sleek, almost organic curves of the derelict's hull. In 30 years of scouring the stars, he'd never laid eyes on a vessel so alien, so utterly unlike anything he recognized. But the lure of potential valuable tech was too much to resist. If they didn't claim the ship, someone else would, and in the cutthroat world of space salvage, every score mattered. "We're going in. Mike, Rishi, suit up and keep an eye on things from the ship. Zach, you're with me. Let's see what secrets this ghost ship is hiding." The umbilical connected with a dull clang, the derelict looming silently before them like a slumbering beast. As Logan and Zach cut through the strange hull, a sense of unnatural wrongness crept over them, an instinctive revulsion that mounted with every step onto the dimly lit alien deck. The air was breathable, the gravity functional, but the twisting corridors were an unsettling fusion of biological and mechanical, more grown than built. An eerie, chittering sound echoed through the ship, raising the hairs on their necks. Rounding a bend in the fleshy, pulsing passageway, the explorers froze, hit by a wave of primal horror. Before them lay a nightmarish tableau, a mound of mummified corpses of an unknown species, grey skin pulled taut over desiccated bones, bodies shrouded in a glistening web-like substance, and slumped against the wall, a lone survivor, its laboured, rattling breaths the only sound in the Gillant charnel house. Logan and Zach traded a look of dread, the ghastly sight burning into their minds. They'd stumbled onto something far beyond a simple salvage, a derelict ship that was an ancient, mass alien grave. And the horrific mysteries held within could spell their doom if they didn't unravel them quickly and find a way to escape with their lives. In the cold vastness of space, the lost ship had abruptly become a deadly trap, and time was running out for the human explorers to find a way out of the nightmare they'd stumbled into. Logan and Zach approached the lone survivor, their hearts pounding in their chests. The alien figure, slumped against the fleshy wall, weakly raised its head. In the dim light, they could see its eyes, clouded and haunted, fixing them with a desperate gaze. "I am Nox," it rasped, its voice thin and strained. "The last of the Barzan research vessel's crew." Logan and Zach exchanged a glance, a sense of unease growing in the pit of their stomachs. "What happened here?" Logan asked, his voice low and urgent. Nox shuddered, a tremor running through its frail body. "We were investigating an ancient abandoned megastructure when our ship was boarded by a malevolent entity. It slaughtered the crew one by one. I barely escaped, sealing myself in this room." As Nox spoke, Logan and Zach listened intently, their skin crawling at the description of the being that had decimated the Barzan crew, a shape-shifting mass of inky darkness, moving with unnatural speed, leaving a trail of strange webbing in its wake. "It's still on the ship," Nox warned, its voice barely above a whisper, hunting for me to finish what it started. Logan's jaw tightened, his instincts screaming at him to get off the derelict immediately. "We're leaving, now!" Supporting Nox between them, Logan and Zach hurried back towards their entry point, the eerie corridors seeming to twist and shift around them. The chittering sound intensified, echoing from every direction, setting their nerves on edge. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into complete darkness. Logan's heart raced as he fumbled for his flashlight, the oppressive blackness pressing in on them from all sides. In the darkness they heard it, the skittering of claws on metal, drawing closer with each passing second. Logan and Zach cast darting beams of light through the corridors, their breathing ragged and shallow. In the brief flashes of illumination, They caught glimpses of a writhing, shadowy mass rapidly closing in on their position. Gripped by a primal terror, they rushed blindly through the twisting passageways, the ominous skittering always just behind them, drawing inexorably closer. Their hearts pounded in their ears, their minds reeling with the horror of what pursued them. The corridors seemed to stretch on forever, the exit always just out of reach. Logan's grip tightened on Knox, his mind racing as he tried to remember the route back to their ship. But the derelict seemed to shift and change around them, the fleshy walls pulsing with an unseen malevolence. The skittering grew louder, the chittering rising to a deafening crescendo. Logan could feel the hair on the back of his neck standing on end, every fibre of his being screaming at him to run, to escape the nightmare that pursued them. Logan and Zack tumbled through the twisting corridors, their heavy boots pounding against the fleshy deck. Behind them, the skittering, chittering mass of darkness surged forward, its countless eyes gleaming with malevolent hunger. They burst into a large circular chamber, spinning around to face their pursuer. The beams of their flashlights illuminated a nightmarish sight. The entity filled the corridor, a seething mass of inky shadow studded with razor-sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. Knox, hanging limply between Logan and Zack, whispered in a voice filled with dread, "It's here!" Logan and Zack raised their plasma rifles, the weapons whining as they charged. They opened fire, searing bolts of energy lighting up the chamber in strobing flashes of red. The entity recoiled, its chittering rising to an enraged shriek as ichor splattered the walls. In the chaos, Logan's eyes darted around the room searching for a way out. His gaze fell on a control panel on the far side of the chamber. With a sudden flash of insight, he realized it must control the airlock doors lining the walls. "Cover me," Logan shouted over the deafening cacophony. Half carrying, half dragging Knox, he sprinted across the room, plasma bolts sizzling past them. The entity surged forward, its shadowy form absorbing the plasma fire with increasing ease. It was adapting, learning, and the weapons were becoming less and less effective. Logan slammed his hand down on the control panel, his heart pounding in his chest. With a hiss of pneumatics, the airlock doors slid open, revealing the star-strewn void beyond. The entity hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. Logan and Zack seized the moment, hurling themselves and Knox through the nearest airlock. The sudden decompression sucked them out into space, the cold embrace of the void enveloping them. As they tumbled away from the ship, they caught a final glimpse of the entity. Its form dissipated into wisps of shadow as the airlock doors slammed shut behind them, the derelict vessel once again a silent tomb. Adrift in the silent void, the only sound was the hiss of their suits' thrusters. Logan and Zack breathed heavily, their hearts still racing from the narrow escape. They clutched Knox's unconscious form between them, the alien's body limp in the zero gravity. In the distance, a familiar shape grew larger, their own ship homing in on their suit transponders. The promise of safety drew nearer with each passing second, but the horror of what they had witnessed still clung to them like a shroud. As they drifted closer to their ship, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The derelict vessel held secrets far more terrifying than they had ever imagined, and the entity that had pursued them was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The questions raced through his mind as they approached the airlock. What was that thing? Where did it come from? And most importantly, was it truly trapped on the derelict? Or had they just unleashed something far more sinister into the galaxy? As Mike and Rishi hauled Logan, Zack, and Knox's battered forms aboard, the airlock seals shut with a hiss, the crew's ragged breaths filling the cramped space. Stumbling into the medbay, they lay Knox on a cot, his eyes fluttering open as he regains consciousness. The crew gathers around, their faces etched with concern and fear as the alien begins to speak, his voice weak and trembling. "The entity, it consumed my crew one by one," Knox whispers, his gaze distant and haunted. "It absorbed their knowledge, their memories, growing stronger with each life it claimed." Logan and Zack exchange a glance, the horror of what they witnessed on the Barzan ship still fresh in their minds. Knox continues, his words coming in halting gasps. The megastructure we were investigating, it was no derelict, it was a prison, built eons ago to contain the creature, but our meddling, we released it. A heavy silence falls over the room, the weight of Knox's revelation settling like a shroud. Rishi breaks the stillness, his voice tight with fear. Captain, the Barzan ship, it's moving. Logan whirls to face the viewport, his eyes widening in disbelief. The derelict vessel, once a lifeless husk, now drifts towards them with purpose, gaining speed as it closes the distance. Logan barks orders, his voice cutting through the rising panic. Evasive maneuvers now, we need to... Before he can finish, a tendril of inky darkness lashes out from the Barzan ship, bridging the gap between the vessels in an instant. It latches onto their hull with a sickening crunch, the lights flickering ominously as a chittering sound echoes through the corridors. It's here, Knox breathes, his face ashen. It's found us. The crew springs into action, sealing off sections of the ship in a desperate bid to slow the entity's advance. Logan's mind races, a grim realization settling in his gut. They cannot outrun the creature, and they cannot fight it head-on. As the chittering grows louder, the shadows deepening in the corners of the room, Logan knows their only hope is to find a way to contain the entity once more. Or die trying. In the dim, flickering light of the medbay, Logan and Knox huddled together, their faces drawn and haggard as they pored over the ship's schematics. The entity's chittering echoed through the corridors, a constant reminder of the horror that hunted them. Logan's jaw tightened as he traced a finger along the display, his mind racing. The reactor core, he said, his voice low and urgent. If we can lure the entity back onto your ship and overload the core, the resulting singularity might trap it. Knox nodded slowly, his eyes haunted. It's a desperate gamble, but it may be our only chance. He paused, his gaze meeting Logan's. I'll stay behind to trigger the detonation manually. It's the only way to ensure the entity is caught in the blast. Logan opened his mouth to protest, but the words died on his lips as he saw the resolve in Knox's eyes. With a heavy heart, he clasped the alien's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the sacrifice he was willing to make. As the crew prepared for their final stand, Logan and Zack donned their EVA suits once more, the fabric feeling heavy and cumbersome as they checked their seals. In the engineering bay, Mike and Rishi worked frantically to repair the damage to their ship, their faces grim and sweat-soaked in the harsh light. Logan and Zack stepped into the airlock, the hiss of pressurization loud in their ears. As the outer doors slid open, they caught their first glimpse of the tendril connecting the two ships, a pulsing, writhing mass of darkness that seemed to drink in the starlight. With a nod to each other, they pushed off, thrusters flaring as they drifted towards the tendril. Logan's heart pounded in his chest as they drew closer, the chittering sound growing louder with each passing second. Aboard the Barzan vessel, Knox's fingers flew over the control panel, initiating the sequence to overload the reactor core. Warning lights flashed and alarms blared as the ship's systems protested the impending catastrophe. The entity, as if sensing the trap, redoubled its efforts to breach the human ship and escape. Tendrils lashed out, slamming against the hull with sickening thuds. In the engineering bay, Mike and Rishi fought to keep the ship together, sparks flying as they welded and patched the strained bulkheads. Suddenly a tendril punched through the hull, the screech of tearing metal filling the air. Rishi turned, his eyes widening in horror as the inky darkness surged towards him. In a heartbeat, the tendril impaled him, his scream cut short as it dragged his lifeless body back towards the Barzan vessel. Mike's anguished cry echoed over the comms, his grief and rage palpable. Grabbing a plasma rifle, he charged towards the breach, his eyes wild with fury and desperation. Outside, Logan and Zack struggled against the entity's tendrils, their plasma cutters flaring as they fought to sever the connection between the ships. Logan's heart sank as he heard Mike's screams, the situation aboard their ship deteriorating rapidly. With a sinking feeling in his gut, Logan made the agonizing decision to detach their ship, abandoning Mike and Knox to their fates. His hand shook as he reached for the release, his eyes meeting Zach's through their visors. As the ship separated, Logan and Zach could only watch helplessly as Mike's screams echoed over the comms, abruptly silenced as the entity engulfed him. Moments later, the Barzan ship detonated in a blinding flash of light, the shockwaves slamming into their vessel and sending them tumbling through space. In the aftermath, Logan and Zach drifted in silence, the weight of their losses heavy on their shoulders. They had succeeded in stopping the entity, but the cost had been higher than they ever could have imagined. As they plotted a course for the nearest space station, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Out in the vast reaches of space, other ancient prisons might be waiting, their occupants stirring from their slumber, ready to unleash their horrors upon an unsuspecting galaxy. The thought sent a chill down his spine, and he gripped the controls tighter, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.